2, 1. Welcome to Foxy Film Nights.
This unit is focused on social justice issues. For example, discrimination, race, sexuality, and segregation. The 4 movies that we watched was Selma, which was focused on Black voting rights, Zootopia, which was focused on discrimination, stereotypes, and government corruption, Philadelphia, that was focused on discrimination against sexuality and power abuse, and Who Framed Roger Rabbit, that was focused on segregation between the tunes and the humans.
Today, we'll be ranking the 4 movies based on realistic situation, how broad to specific they were, and favorites. So, first off, I'm just going to rate them by how realistic they were. Okay, so we have Selma for first. It was a very realistic situation. The main focus was about Black voting rights and segregation, and it just truly showed, like, how people during that time would have actually experienced what was going on. And then second, we'll say Philadelphia, because Philadelphia mainly focused on a gay man with AIDS and his court trial getting fired and him taking it to court and how he slowly died from the illness. Third, we'll say Zootopia, because it focused on many areas: discrimination, stereotypes, government corruption, and though it was based on like species and animals, it was the most realistic to how the actual how actual society is and towards discrimination. And then lastly, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. It was well done. The animation was really cool because they mixed like real life and animation. However, it doesn't I don't know, it was just like tunes and humans, and it was really hard to like find an actual like correlation to real life. It was
super simplified compared to real life.
And so the rest of these were a little bit more complex and a little bit more like not specific but like more detailed.
Yeah.
So it was kind of hard to like Who Framed Roger Rabbit because it was just too specific. Next, I'll do it on broad to specific. So the most broad being Zootopia, because it covered many different cases. Like it was overall like many different species, many different animals, many different lives. It showed lots of examples of it. Next being Selma, because though it mainly focused on the main characters and their plot, it also showed more background characters, and it showed the reaction of more background characters and how they were reacting to what was going on around them. Third, we'll do Who Framed Roger Rabbit, because though it was just a very simplified like tunes versus humans, it was still a larger group and still showed a big difference between like 2 major groups. And then last being Philadelphia, since it mainly showed the storyline of one gay man and his sickness. Next, we'll do it on to favorites. I'll say mine, and then you can say what your favorites were. Selma is number 1. I just overall really like Selma. I enjoyed the plot. I thought it was really good. It was really deep. It was probably one of the saddest movies I've seen.
Yeah.
Just because of how like realistic it was. Like it was good to see that they weren't downplaying that situation and that they weren't trying to like cover it up because it was hard media to consume. It was like authentically what it would have been like. Next, I really liked Zootopia just for how broad and how it showed like every group. Like I really appreciated how it never focused on like, it did focus on like the storyline of Judy and Nick the most, but it also showed different animals experiencing their own form of discrimination and their own form of issues. Then next, I liked Philadelphia. I thought it was just a really deep storyline. My favorite part in that movie was the opera part. I just really enjoyed how the whole movie, Andy was he didn't really show how he was truly feeling about it. He was very on the quiets about it, and you just never really saw how he felt. Like even in his darkest moments, even on the cases, he never really showed authentically how he felt. And there was one specific scene, the opera scene, where he was just dancing around, and it was like the first time we saw him really come to the conclusion that he was dying and that he was at his end. And I just thought it was a really beautiful cinematic moment to see him like fully breaking down in his most authentic form, knowing that he was coming to the end of his life. And then lastly, Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I thought it was a really funny movie. It was a good movie. It was much easier to process than the others. Even Zootopia, you could still argue that was kind of hard to take in. But Who Framed Roger Rabbit, it was just very easy. It was funny. It was nice. I kind of got lost in the plot a few times and it just felt very repetitive, but overall it was a good movie.
Okay, for my favorites, I would also say that Selma was my number 1 because of how how
authentic.
Yes, it was. It felt very real, and it felt like they didn't downplay anything. And I liked that they showed Martin Luther King. Like, I like that they showed his home life and his um, altercations with his wife, but then they also showed him like planning how to go about his what he was trying to do and his speeches and stuff. I think that it was really well done, and that it really showed what happened in real life. I would say that Zootopia was also my number 2 because I really liked the characters. I think that I liked that how they put in humor and, like, you know, things like making Mr. Big little, but then he ends up helping them and stuff. I just think it's funny, but it's still a dark topic, and it's easier to digest that way. And I have to agree that Philadelphia, I do think that it could have been better just if it wasn't so focused on the court case. I just really wish that they focused more on his daily life and, like, more on the discrimination in his day-to-day life, and also the support by his friends and family, just more of that. But I still think that it showed the topic in a way that is realistic, and so I would say it's number 3. Who Framed Roger Rabbit, I would put it at number 4 because I really enjoyed how they mixed the animation and real life. I think that was really nice, and they did it really well. But I do think it was just, for the topic that it was talking about, it was just so simplified. It's hard to imagine that in real life, even though it's based off a real life thing. So I would put it at number 4. Okay, for our 5th film, we chose The 688. It's a movie that focuses on the black female section of the army, and they're put to, like, an almost impossible task to give them a hard time basically, because the higher up, the white people, they don't believe in them. They think it's dumb that they're in the army, but they actually overcome it and help the war effort by a lot. And so I would say that this takes the 5th spot, or is the 5th movie that could be added, because it's about overcoming discrimination and segregation, even whenever it's expected, basically. Like, they overcame it, and they helped, and they gained respect through that. So I think that's, yeah.
Okay, so overall, our final thoughts on the unit theme. For me personally, I really like the theme. I think it was really good to start off with because I feel like that's something, it's a unit that we're all very familiar with, and it's something that we've grown up learning about. And so it was nice to see both a fun and deeper twist onto that unit. Like like all the movies that were picked, I feel like they were able to show, like, at different levels, like somebody can understand how it truly was at different levels, like with Selma being like the hardest to consume, in my opinion, just from how, like, deep and how real it really seemed, to Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where it's a mix of animation and real life. I just really enjoyed that. I feel like all the movies were to a different spectrum, and so I feel like anybody who watched all those movies would be able to understand the overall theme.
Yeah, I would say, I just think it's a very important theme to discuss because discrimination, things like that, is always happening everywhere, all different kinds. So I think it's good to talk about it in a class like this and have easier and harder ways to digest it. I also think that
I think the movies were really good, and I really liked the choices. I definitely was a little iffy about Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I think it's a funny movie, but I feel like there's definitely, like, options that are equally as funny but have a little bit more meaning behind them. I don't necessarily say I would take out that movie, but I would maybe either include, like, a 5th one or find one of, like, equal humor.
Yeah.
I think Selma was probably, like, the best movie that could have fit into that. Zootopia is also, I think
Zootopia, I think, is the best because it's real, and it feels real, and it feels like I like how many perspectives and stuff that we get, but it's still humorous, and it's still easy to digest because it's not based off humans, it's based off animals. So I think it did a really good job with that. I think it's good for this unit, especially as a first movie to watch.
I think it was the best movie that we could have watched as a first one. I feel like it really opened up to what type of movies we'd be watching, but also was very easy to go from summer break to school with an easy transition. Philadelphia, I think, was good. I feel like it could have fit. I think it could have fit into a unit in itself. I think if there was a unit on like sexuality and discrimination and sexuality, I think it could have fit into more there. It was a little bit difficult to like have 3 movies that were technically about race.
Yeah, they were about race and like segregation, basically.
Yeah, and so it was kind of hard to go from strictly segregation and race and stuff like that, and then we go to a gay man with AIDS. I feel like there definitely should have been. I definitely think it's a good movie to include, and I would absolutely keep it in the unit. It was a good movie. It was well made cinematically. I really enjoyed the plot.
I really liked that it felt so like authentic. Like we were there. It was like almost when I first saw it, I feel like I almost described it as like a school project, but done by people who can actually act. It felt like you were really there.
I remember you making that note, like in the beginning when they were doing the video. I remember you being like, "This looks like a home video."
It didn't feel like overly produced, and I also liked that at the end they added videos of him like as a kid to like humanize him basically in his situation, and that again added to that feel of like you're actually there, like you knew this person basically.
I definitely do think I would keep it in. I just wish there was a separate unit on sexuality and discrimination among sexuality. I feel like that would be a very good unit to go over, but also it just didn't really fit into segregation. I think if there was a different movie that wasn't just about segregation, it would have fit more, because it definitely does fit in with discrimination. I just think it should either be put into its own separate unit, or you should have there should be another movie on.
I think that its own unit, that's a good idea, because even while we were watching, I noticed people not taking it as seriously. Yeah. And even people putting it last on their list because it has a gay man in it. Like, there's still that type of thing going on in school. Like, we see it all the time. So I think that it's good, especially that movie, because of how it, like, humanized him so much. Like, it was just some dude, and, like, it wasn't so focused on the fact that he was gay. It was focused on how his illness was ruining his life, and, like, he was basically accepting that he was gonna die. So I think that it did a good job at that, and that it's a good idea if we could maybe have a unit based off that.
Just because I feel like it's not, like, though that like discrimination is still like present, people have learned that it's like, hey, that's bad if you haven't noticed. And I feel like there's still a lot of stigma around like LGBT and stuff like that. And so I wish that there was more media consumed in schools and like school systems like that went along with discrimination. Yeah. Okay, that was Foxy Film Nights. Thank you for listening. Tune in next month for our next unit. Yay, bye.